Hey everyone, I'm Henry. I'm a professor of philosophy and religion and spiritual leader. Please seek professional help in dealing with substance abuse issues. It's great to get a control of these. You'll find your life gets much better. So I have a variety of things to talk about today, but I think one of the main themes is going to be that alcohol takes the place of other things in your life, even for the moderate drinker. And I think the biochemistry may work like this, that alcohol promotes this dopamine rush, that the science on that seems conclusive. That's what all the medical people are saying with all the drugs. Actually, a big dopamine rush, probably a big serotonin rush with alcohol, although I don't have the facts on that, but some scientists are saying that. So there's a big rush in the brain of these feel-good chemicals. You get a sense of euphoria. Now, the brain knows it regulates the amount of these important chemicals for its processing. So it can tell that it's getting these big surges of these chemicals. So part of what the brain apparently does is limits the production of these chemicals at other times due to other causes. And that appears to be the biochemistry of why we don't feel as good when we are not drinking or not using a drug of choice. Because the brain knows, oh, well, there's a surplus of dopamine. I don't need no more dopamine. So when you wake up in the morning and see what a beautiful day it is, when you're working out, when you're going for a walk, when you're doing what is normally very pleasurable, your brain already knows, well, there's too much dopamine in the system anyway. So I'm not going to really release dopamine now because I'm going to wait for that big dopamine dump later on. So what that means existentially for what we're feeling, it means that normal everyday things don't produce as much happiness as they normally did. And this is what a lot of drug users report, that they just don't have a sense of happiness doing normal things, just living a normal life. In fact, it becomes sort of unbearable. Anhedonia, hedonism, pleasure, anhedonia, not finding pleasure in normal things like having a cup of coffee, having a great workout, reading a great book, reading great articles, watching great interesting documentary, walking on the beach. Walking on the beach just doesn't produce any pleasure because you sort of zapped your brain out of pleasure. So that, I think, for me is what I've been saying about there's no free lunch, that alcohol doesn't really give anything because whatever it gives in that moment, yes, it does, its sense of euphoria, it takes away from others. Tiredness the next day, lack of pleasure in normal everyday things. So that's what I would say. That's my simple message in all of this. And I'm trying to include everything that I've learned that supports that. One person writes that he was always scared by the idea of totally giving up alcohol. When we've talked a lot about that, it can be something that's a little, well, he used the word scary, but a little something that you don't want to do. And he said, but after 100 days of not drinking, he could think about the prospect of not drinking alcohol at all ever again without that sense of trepidation or fear, or the fear of he was missing out. So that's interesting after 100 days. And I can confirm that from last year at this time when I did the 90 days. At 90 days I didn't particularly want to drink ever again. So yeah, you can reach that point, which is an amazing point because you've rewired your brain, you've changed your habits, you've changed your focus, a little bit you've changed who you are, maybe a lot bit you've changed who you are. So after 100 days, he didn't really have a sense of fear and trepidation about it. And he also said that at some point he just never wanted to drink again, never really had a real cravings for it. And I think he was honest. He said, I know that's not the case for other people. So in some ways that's lucky, just to be totally devoid of those cravings. And he did it. I think I did it to maybe a lesser degree, and I reached the point where I didn't have particular cravings, didn't particularly want it. It didn't seem like, for my higher brain, my rational brain, something I really wanted to engage with anymore. Another person wrote that 30 days was really not enough for her. She would take 30 days off, it would be good, but she would go back. So it wasn't quite enough. So that's why I focus on these 90 days, because it's been part of my experience, and it's been what other people have shared about their experience. So 30 days was just not quite enough to really make that full change. Here's a true story, as far as I can tell, by someone who is reporting this. He was a middle-aged salesman, and he woke up in one of his cities, but he had no memory of how he had gotten there. In fact, he missed a block of 5 days, and even years later, he could not remember. So he was a salesman. He would have dinner, he would have drinks, and he would drink a lot, and then he somehow was supposed to be in one city and then another, and he woke up in a hotel room in a different city. He didn't know where he was, and he found out, and he checked with the hotel staff, and he found the person that he checked in with, and that person said, yeah, you checked in, you appeared to be like you had been drinking, but nothing too terrible. So he had lost his memory for 5 days. It scared him so much he didn't drink for 2 more years. This tells us again what the powerful effect of alcohol has, especially on memory, on the part of the brain that deals with encoding memories. And somehow this guy drove during the day, or flew, or took a train. Somehow he got into his next city, into a hotel. He didn't know where he had eaten food. He basically, those 5 days were lost. I've always thought of this story because it tells you how someone can be functional in terms of work, but this very powerful drug, very addictive, but also very powerful in that it removes a lot of our ability to write memories. So that's always something to think about. This isn't the cleanest. It's not the cleanest drug. It's not this. It's not just this sense of euphoria. It's also cutting back on our critical thinking skills and our higher brain, our executive functioning, our decision making, and also our memory. And a lot of our emotions too. We lose control of what emotions we want to have. But this particular story is very telling. This man lost track of 5 days of his life. For many people, reading reports that yes, alcohol has that sense of euphoria, that sense of happiness, extreme well-being, anxiety goes away, stress seems to go away. But also alcohol has this rebound effect, this crash afterwards, this alcoholic depression afterwards. And I've seen this with people who drink a lot on video as they present who they are. And they get that brief moment of euphoria, but then afterwards there's this self-hatred, this anxiety, this depression, this not wanting to be there, even while they're on the substance of alcohol. So it's a few moments of euphoria that connects with probably even longer moments of depression. And people have noticed that. And as a light to moderate drinker, people notice that as well. You get a mild increase in mood, and then afterwards there's sort of this tired, run-down feeling. So, is alcohol the antidote or the poison? Is it the antidote that cures the poison, or is it the poison that needs an antidote? And I think people get into this idea that they're feeling bad, maybe from the previous day's drinking, and they need an antidote for that. They need a cure for that. And alcohol seems to provide it, and it does in those moments. It is sort of an antidote right then. but then it becomes the poison. Alcohol is itself the antidote that becomes the poison for which you want the antidote. And I think we tend to think of that alcohol as a medication that we can self-medicate and get rid of our anxiety. But it's actually the poison in many cases that is calling for the need for an antidote. One person writes this, observe your level of happiness, your level of anxiety, hours after taking alcohol or caffeine. And this person's big on meditation. And what this person says is that these substances really disrupt the ability to meditate and have a sense of calmness and non-anxiety and peace and happiness. And he says, observe what you're really feeling hours later. So if you are drinking, say, in the afternoon, and then you stop at some point, see what you're feeling hours later. Are you really happier? Are you more energized? And he actually says the same with coffee and caffeine. And this is definitely true for me as well. If I have coffee at 7, 8, 9 in the morning, yeah, it really wakes me up. But in the afternoon, I really crash much more. So again, there's no free lunch with this, trying to change the brain chemistry. But for both alcohol and caffeine, there's this sense that even hours later, be attentive and careful to what you're experiencing. And that's my main point, is look at the whole picture, the whole package of how much this is going to cost you. Another person looks at the issue of alcohol use in terms of happiness. We take alcohol because we want the lift in the mood, makes us feel good, makes us happier. But ultimately, this person writes, happiness is something that comes from within, from who you are as a person, how you live your life. And obviously, taking a drug or a substance cannot really make us happy in the full sense of the word happiness. Happiness comes from a more authentic interaction with life. That's ultimately what happiness really is. These momentary blips of experience are not really happiness. There may be a brief moment of happiness, but ultimately happiness also means something else. It means something that has to do with meaning, with integrity, with purpose, with the overall arching plan of your life. And so just question this idea that alcohol is really providing happiness to our lives. And we tend to think that way. I know I did as a light to moderate drinker, thinking that alcohol is adding to the happiness factor of life, to the health factor. And that's really questionable. Certainly in that particular moment it does, but it takes back later. So the final calculus, when you sum it all up, it probably does not give anything to happiness overall. And we shouldn't be thinking in terms of getting our happiness from an external, extraneous substance out there, as if something out there, a substance, is going to give us true internal spiritual happiness. It has to really come from something more within. And I think in some ways we know that. It can be trite to say that, but fundamentally that's true. A lot of bad behavior comes out with alcohol too, from serious alcoholics to more moderate drinkers. Half of all murders occur, and it's associated with alcohol. On college campuses, rapes, 70% associated with alcohol use. Car accidents, of course, so a lot of death and injury to oneself, to others in the car, and to totally innocent people in other cars. A lot of accidents, and a lot of crime is associated with alcohol for a variety of reasons. And this is confirmed by my experience. I've seen a lot of people do bad things while they are inebriated. It doesn't really even take that much alcohol to turn people into sort of petulant, angry people sometimes. So we need to be careful about that. I mean, really, what is that saying? I mean, caffeine doesn't really have that feature, right? People who have a couple cups of coffee in the morning, I don't think they're much more likely to get in a car accident, maybe less, who knows. But it's not as a dramatic negative impact on people. And one person says it's, this terrible poison that poisons our spirits, poisons our brains, kills our brain cells, and turns us into this monstrous version of ourselves. Yeah, it has the potential to do that. As I looked at the discussion of alcohol on forums where really intelligent people were sharing their views, one person among several was from a culture that alcohol was just not available. And this person was now in the United States as an adult and said, basically, I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life. I never want to. I see what it does to people. It's not an issue for me. I'm just here reading out of some sort of personal interest. But this person never had alcohol, was never an opportunity. And this person can look at this whole discussion of alcohol and all the negatives and the difficulty people have getting off it. And this person says, I'm glad I'm not on it. I enjoy life the way it is. I don't see people who are drinking being any happier. Another person says, I'm just drunk with life as a whole. I'm so happy with life in every moment. And this is a real spiritual perspective, that you can create your life that you are totally enjoying every moment or most moments in life. You can take real bliss and joy really in everything in life. You can look at it just waking up in a warm bed, waking up. I have a view of trees and nature. It snowed last night. It was beautiful this morning. I went out, took pictures. You can just enjoy everything. I worked out. One thing can lead to another. I can appreciate the food I have. And one can be like drunk with life, and alcohol doesn't really seem to offer that much if you have that attitude that you are inebriated with life, that you have a spiritual overflowing happiness with life. You learn to really appreciate the little things and the important things in life. You don't need a substance to help you do that. You don't want to risk any of the great things you have already. You already have that. You already have happiness. So you don't need something to add to it. And I thought that was a very nice attitude from someone who looks at alcohol from the outside and really doesn't see anything good with it. And yeah, that's part of the problem with experimenting with alcohol, is that you do see that dopamine rush, the serotonin rush, the brain rush. It does affect major neurotransmitters, and you do experience that. And you can experience that as very positive. You can also experience a sort of dizzy uncomfortableness, but many people do experience it as bliss. But the alternative is to really develop a life where you appreciate everything. And that, again, is my main point. Alcohol gives nothing, it takes away. So it's taking away from these other times. The other times in life where you enjoy the morning, having a nice lunch, enjoying the afternoon, enjoying the sun going down, finding your entertainment, connecting with other people. All of that is really the focus. And if alcohol is increasing stress hormones, cortisol, if it's affecting brain function, then it's not good. And that's one thing I learned from stopping caffeine. It's like even 2, 3, 4 days later, I was very tired, had some headaches. People often say it takes 2 or 3 weeks. So these chemicals seem to affect brain functioning for several weeks, if not months. So if it's having this profound long-term effect, not just at the time of inebriation, not just at the time of enjoyment, but that night and days and even weeks later, it's interfering with this ability to see bliss and all the simple things in life. And that, I think, is my main message, that alcohol takes away from these other times. So when you factor all that in, it's a net loss.